Vladimir Putin has suspended Russia's last remaining nuclear treaty with the U.S. The announcement part of a fiery speech accusing Western countries of starting the war in Ukraine, with Putin saying Russia does not abandon the treaty but suspends its participation. The president's State of the Nation address comes as the Russian invasion of Ukraine approaches the one-year mark on Friday, with President Biden making a surprise visit to Kyiv over the weekend in a show of support, and he is set to deliver a speech in Poland shortly. Joining us to discuss all of this and more is Greg Valliere, AGF Investments Chief U.S. Policy Strategist. Greg, it's good to see you. So obviously that was quite a surprise visit as well from President Biden over the weekend. It seems like both sides are sort of ramping up into this one-year anniversary. Is it still a successful strategy for Biden to be supporting Ukraine to the extent that the U.S. has been?
Well, I think he feels there are valid reasons to do it. If we don't, other parts of Central Europe could be vulnerable. So I think this is something the U.S. has to continue vigorously. However, Julie, I think there were two developments over the weekend that really complicate the war in Ukraine. First of all, China is making it clear they may send arms to Russia. That would be an enormous escalation of conflict, and I think it would perhaps threaten a rupture between the U.S. and China, certainly a rupture on the trade front. The only plus I could see is that the defense stocks could do quite well. I think we're going to wind up spending a lot there. Secondly, the other thing that complicates this is U.S. public opinion. And polls are now showing the public's about evenly divided on aid to Ukraine. That's way down from the fall. And people like Ron DeSantis are saying, why are we spending all this money?
So, Greg, a lot of investors out there would wonder, especially as they're hearing over the course of this earnings season from companies like Tesla and like Apple, how they're continuing to monitor the war in Ukraine and potentially what this means for their own supply chains, what this means for just more broadly how they can plan not just their investments, but also how these companies will operate around the different relations that are emerging between Russia and China and what that means. What is the best way that investors can still kind of grapple with or get a sense of how that might impact the companies that they've invested in?
Well, I think people are going to have to become very realistic, Brad. I think that there's virtually no chance of this war ending anytime soon, as long as Putin is around. I mean, if Putin gets ousted, that's a whole different story.
But does it worsen?
I've heard people say that, but I think if Putin got ousted, a caretaker like Medvedev would come in, and I think a caretaker would probably feel that he has an exit ramp, that he has an opportunity to extricate Russia from this terrible war. But that said, I think a lot of the companies, as you just mentioned, are going to have to be quite realistic about the uncertainty. I think the uncertainty, not just with Russia, but obviously with China, is going to persist for a long time.
How should you just mentioned if Putin somehow got ousted, right? What's the probability of that now versus a year ago? Has it become any more realistic?
I would argue yes, Julie. First of all, it's been a debacle for the Russians. They've lost maybe 200,000 troops, either killed or wounded. They have seen a lot of young men flee Moscow and St. Petersburg. You're seeing the Russian economy getting more and more fragile. So, yeah, I would say that there are lots of oligarchs and there are lots of generals who I think would like to see Putin go. Getting to him is another story, however. That's not going to be easy. But you get the sense that among the military elite in particular, there's growing dissatisfaction with Putin.
And let's get back to China as well. And Russia is sort of a proxy in the, let's just call it a Cold War between the U.S. and China, right? At least a cold dispute, if you will, if war is too strong. Where are we on that continuum, especially given the balloon gate that just happened and now, Blinken traveling to Europe and not really making much progress?
It was really quite shocking to see that Blinken finally got a meeting with his counterpart in Munich and things got worse. I think relations between the U.S. and China have soured even further. And in addition to a big defense spending increase in the U.S., I think that there's virtually zero chance that the Donald Trump sanctions would be lifted. In fact, I think there's a chance the sanctions against China could be increased.
Wow, that is quite something. We're going to keep an eye on that one. Greg Valliere, good to catch up with you as always. AGF Investments Chief U.S. Policy Strategist. Thank you.
Bet.